My name's Kent, and I am a grateful believer in Jesus Christ, who struggles with drug, alcohol, and many other addictive behaviors. Tonight I'm going to give you my testimony. I didn't want to, but they told me, because I'm the CR ministry leader here in Laverne, that I set the pace and I'm supposed to do mine first. I lead out. So everybody's golden after this. You got the worst one out of the way. So here we go. I was born in Missouri but raised up in Springfield, Illinois. I better put on my glasses so I can read. My parents had 3 boys, and I was the middle son. Being the middle child, I never really felt like I fit in. My older brother was the more responsible one. My younger brother was the baby of the family, and I was the black sheep. Ever since I can remember, my brothers were thin and I was heavy, which contributed to the feelings of not fitting in and low self-esteem. My dad was a very hard-working man, not only being a truck driver, but had a dump truck business also. He was gone quite often, which left my working mother to pretty much raise 3 boys by herself most of the time. My parents did take us to church, but it was my mother who took us to Little League baseball games, Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts activities. Both of them provided a good home and modeled a good work ethic for us. Around the age of 9, I started stealing my dad's cigarettes and beer. After all, I watched him use them and thought I should try them myself. The first time I smoked, I got dizzy and lightheaded. Quite frankly, it felt very euphoric to me, almost like an out-of-body experience. I had no idea of the hell I had just unleashed on my life for the next 23 years as I chased after that feeling of euphoria. I thought smoking made me cool and tough in school. This acting out and fighting brought attention to me in negative ways. Then I would isolate, feeling very alone and angry. By age 11, I knew that my life was full of sin and messed up, and that I needed to be saved. So I accepted Christ and was baptized May 3rd, 1970. At that time, I really did not have anyone to mentor me in my life. So left to my own devices, I continued to self-destruct. I was always trying to fill this void in my life. It was like having a hole in your soul, and I searched for anyone or anything to fill it. This drive in me to fit in led me to hang out with the wrong crowd of people. Some were older than me, and they introduced me to marijuana by the time I was in middle school. I started selling drugs to supply my own habit and thought I was cool because I had connections and people wanted what I had. I started developing this outlaw mentality, constantly doing and living outside the law, rebelling against all authority, my parents, even God. By the time high school came around, I had got caught with drugs and put on probation. While on probation, I had a drug overdose, which almost cost me my life. That got me locked up in a psych ward for 9 days, then sent to Peaceful Valley Youth Ranch in Carlinville, Illinois. I was thrown out of that boys' home and returned to my parents after supplying the other boys with enough drugs to start a small riot. When I got home, I started back to high school, and I had the tendency to skip school and only show up 2 or 3 days a week. I took drafting in school, and I really liked it, but my instructor told me that I should choose another career because I would never make it. Another teacher told me to drop out now because I would never make it to graduation. During this time in high school, I began to get involved in IV drug use. At the age of 17, my dad, who was 50, died from cancer. And for 2 years, I watched him dying from this disease as I would pray and ask God to save him. When he passed away, I got so mad at God. I thought God had a scorecard and already had 3 strikes against me and was out. Now, with so much anger, grief, and a flawed belief system, I turned my back on God and said, this doesn't work. God won't help me. I did graduate high school and went on to study drafting and technical drawing at Quincy Technical School in Quincy, Illinois. My drinking really took off in this unsupervised environment, but I did manage to graduate. Trying to fill the void in my life and fit in. At age 19, I got married to a woman with a 6-month-old baby girl. I thought it would help me slow down and make me a more responsible adult. I really wanted to feel loved and needed. Again, my flawed belief system equated sex as love. Shortly after being married, we had another child. My alcohol and drug use continued with very little regard for my family. During that marriage, I moved in from Illinois to Texas, from Texas to Oklahoma, then to Kansas. While living in Kansas, God sent the Parsons City Police Department to save me from drinking and drugging myself to death and to motivate me into His process of recovery for me. I had gotten to the point 2 years before this event where I was truly sick and tired of living like I was. I wanted to quit using, but I couldn't. I was arrested for my 4th DUI and possession charge in 1992. My wife told me that I needed to get help, and she gave me a phone number of a man that was in AA. My first few meetings, I was high when I went. I could not even imagine my life without drinking and thought if I gave up drinking that I would be bored to death. God gave me the revelation that if I was going to get sober, I would need to quit using drugs also, because when I drank, I liked to get high, and when I got high, I liked to drink. My drug of choice was simply more, and it did not matter what it was at that point. Those AA old-timers explained the marijuana maintenance program that I was doing and suggested I go to a treatment facility. So I decided to go just so I could save my job and my marriage. At the House of Hope in Grove, Oklahoma, is where God introduced me to my sponsor, a huge 6-foot Native American Indian. And the first words out of this man's mouth were, "When the student is ready, the teacher will appear." He also told me that many are called, but few are chosen. I wasn't real sure I wanted to be chosen. While in treatment, I started to question whether I was really an alcoholic or not. After all, I had a job, I had a house, cars, a wife, children. 30 days after I got out of this 30-day treatment facility, I came home from work to an empty house and was served divorce papers. In the next several months, I lost the house and cars in bankruptcy. The wife and children were lost in the divorce and eventually the job. It was as if I could hear God say, "Now what do you have left?" I was so broken at that point. I cried out to the Lord and said, "God, help me. God, I've tried to fix me and I can't. If you don't fix me, I won't make it." At this turning point in my life, I got the visualization of the Lord's hands holding my broken heart. I felt as if the healing process had just begun. My sponsor took me into the sweat lodge and started praying for me because I felt like I was so lost I couldn't pray. It would get so hot in that sweat lodge at times I thought I would die, but I eventually got to the place where I was able to start praying again. At this point, I am fully convinced about Principle 1 that states, "Realize I'm not God. I admit that I'm powerless and to control my tendency to do the wrong thing and that my life is unmanageable. I started gaining hope in principle 2 that states, earnestly believe that God exists, that I matter to Him, and that He has the power to help me recover. And I decided to take action on principle 3 that states, consciously choose to commit all my life and will to Christ's care and control. One of my favorite verses is Ezekiel 36, verses 26 through 27. It says, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. I will take the heart of stone out of your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes and keep my judgments and do them. You see, over the years, I had become so broken and hard-hearted, I needed a heart transplant, and I didn't even know it. God had to replace that spirit of rebellion with His Holy Spirit so I could begin to live within the law. Through the inventory process, I discovered a lot of my destructive behaviors and how these behaviors had hurt me and others. Part of the addictive cycle was that I would cheat on my wife, and then I would feel guilt, shame, and remorse about my actions. I then would try to medicate these feelings and pain that I had inflicted on my life and hers. I discovered how much I had hurt my children by being so selfish and self-centered, all the time rationalizing and justifying that as long as I made money and provided for them, that everything would be okay, when they really just wanted me and my time. My youngest daughter said to me when I got out of treatment, you haven't been my dad for 13 years. Why start now? She wanted nothing to do with me. And my sponsor told me to leave her alone, that one day she would come back in her own time. Another scripture that has meant so much to me is Joel 2, verses 25 through 27, that says, I will restore to you the years that the swarming locust has eaten, the crawling locust, the consuming locust, and the chewing locust, my great army which I sent among you. You shall eat in plenty and be satisfied, and praise the name of Lord your God, who has dealt wondrously with you. And my people shall never be put to shame. Then you shall know that I am in the midst of Israel. I am the Lord your God, and there is no other. My people shall never be put to shame. God moved me to Tennessee in 1993, and 4 years later, in my daughter's junior year of high school, she came to live with me for the entire year. This was truly God's time for some genuine restoration of that father-daughter relationship. There really is no amends you can make to restore childhood. But my daughter knows how truly sorry I am for being the way I was, and we have such a special relationship today. She always sends me a birthday card on my sobriety birthday and tells me she's proud of me. That's praise for God. I have made amends with my ex-wife to the best of my abilities and forgiven her for her trespasses against me. I came to understand that after 13 years, she could no longer stand to watch me slowly killing myself, and she did not know whether I would ever sober up or not. I told her she had every right in the world to divorce me. If I was her, I probably would not have waited 13 years. My mom doesn't lose sleep worrying about whether or not I'm in jail, or that she'll get a call that I've been in a wreck and in a hospital somewhere or worse. She knew I had a bad bad habit about drinking and driving. When I look back over those times, I realize how much God had protected me and kept me for times such as this. Some of the best amends I can make to my family are to stay sober and to train to be the best dad, son, and brother I can be. My relationships with my daughters, my mother, and my brothers have been restored and are being made better as I continue in recovery. Over the next several years, I continued to go to meetings and enlarge my spiritual life. I also became a sponsor for several other men. God has afforded me many opportunities to have a closer relationship with Him. Some of the most profound spiritual experiences were with the Cheyenne Indian tribe in Oklahoma. They helped teach me that I was to be of maximum service to God and my fellow man. When God put my wife Leanne on my path of recovery, I was really afraid to ask her to marry me because I had so many fears, insecurities, and baggage from my past that I didn't want to take that into a marriage. After 3 days of fasting and praying on the mountain in South Dakota, I asked her to marry me. In 2002, the Lord gave me the gift of my wife, Leanne. She is my partner and my helpmate from the Lord, and I truly value and cherish her today. Through the grace of God, the 12 steps, and a sponsor, I now have almost 14 years in a monogamous relationship with my wife, and she has never seen me drunk or high. Praise God. Woo! Yeah. In 2004, we went back to the mountains to South Dakota. I had a very tough experience during that time of prayer and fasting, which brought me to a completely new level of surrender to God. Leanne also had an experience that brought her to the point of accepting Jesus Christ in her life while we were there. God was preparing to take us back into the church, and I had serious fears of not fitting in, that I didn't belong there. He moved me to start seeking out a church for my wife and I, so that I could be taught how to do a marriage His way and for much, much more. In 2010, I was introduced to Celebrate Recovery. God worked through CR at Bel Air in Murfreesboro to take me to the Summit meeting in California. Since then, my wife and I have been the youth leaders for 2 years at Walter Hill Baptist Church. I have been through a step study with my man Floyd as part of the process for being able to start the meeting here at Grace Church. I am currently taking 4 other men through a step study in order to get them qualified for leadership. I seem to have discovered a new issue with food in my health while trying to help them. And my wife Leanne is so excited about serving God and others through CR dinners. She also is currently going through a CR step study herself so she can become even more involved in this ministry. I am still amazed and so grateful how God is using Celebrate Recovery to impact our marriage and our lives. As of March 21st, 2016, I have reached a milestone in my recovery. I have finally been sober longer than I was, using one day at a time and sometimes one moment at a time for 24 years, clean and sober now. Through divorce, grief, heartache, job loss, whatever has come, God has held me through all of it. God has even set me free for the last 7 years from the 40-year addiction of tobacco. I am so grateful for the old timers that told me, keep coming back. It works if you work it. They knew my life was going to get better, even when I could not see it. They had wisdom, and they loved me, even when I was unlovable. I am grateful beyond words for the hardcore sponsor God put in my life. He has become the best friend and confidant I've ever had. His entire family has embraced me and loved me as if I was one of their own. I personally know and believe that this Christ-centered 12-step process has broken the chains of addictions. It has restored relationships that seem beyond repair. This program has given me a peace and a joy like I have never had in my life while using. God has given me my heart's desire, and even better with Leanne. And God even has a Harley Electra Glide He lets me ride. Those old timers told me God's good, man. Those old timers told me a long time ago that I had to give it away to keep it. Which brings me to Principle 8 that states, yield myself to God to be used to bring this good news to others, both by my example and by my words. God has taken my misery and turned it into His ministry. He has so impacted my life and that I must train to live out Isaiah 61:1 that states, the Spirit of the Lord God is upon me to preach good tidings to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and to the opening of the prisons to those who are bound. Jesus Christ has so impacted the lives of Leanne and I that we have to share what He has done with others. We are so blessed that the Lord has allowed us to help facilitate His ministry of Celebrate Recovery and to walk with others who have hurts, habits, and hang-ups as we watch them be healed and recover. To the newcomer, the Lord has held me and guided me with His amazing love, grace, and mercy for the last 24 years, that I might be a testament and an example to you. It does work if you work it. He has taken my mess and made it His message. He is still there waiting to throw a party when you decide to come back home. Please keep coming back and don't give up before the miracle happens for you personally. Thanks for letting me share.